Okay.
Said
Welcome, everyone.
broadcast is like,
How you doing, everyone? This is John Doyle and Emily Gulfstream, and this is OptixEQ live on YouTube. And today we got a real good program, right? We're going to go over the Kentucky Derby results again, for everybody. This will be the first time I'm weighing in, though. And secondly, we have a special guest, and we'll get into that a little later. I think that'll be interesting. It's a person from not horse racing, but from another type of racing. So I thought it'd be interesting contrast and we've seen some of this. This is a NASCAR guy, Emily, and we saw a little bit of that on the NBC telecast with Dale Earnhardt Jr. as part of that telecast. So I think it's going to be interesting because there's some similarities, some interesting things.
yeah, there really is, and Phil, he's not a regular horse player, but he is familiar with horse racing and is a more recreational player and one that plays the big days. So, and actually I jumped on because he did a Derby show the year before. And so I listened to it and I was like, he did a really good job on that show, So yeah, it's good. It'll be a good discussion and, people want to go back and listen to that podcast. It's, recorded and all that stuff.
Yeah. So the guy's name is Phil Eastman and his show is Full Tank with Phil. It's a podcast. It deals with NASCAR and really gambling on NASCAR. That's really kind
Correct.
of the focus of it, which is a little different than just having a show about NASCAR. So it's interesting. I've got a few questions I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. So he'll be joining us shortly. Emily and I are going to review the Kentucky Derby results, I said, and then later on, I'll just stay on here and go through some of the live racing that's going on and do some handicapping using optics, get people more familiar how to actually apply our product, and so that should be good. We got some decent early races. I think race 1 at Gulfstream might be something enough to look at. So anyway, that's the program for today. So we're going to wait on Phil, but in the meantime, Emily, I just got to bring up the result plot for the Kentucky Derby. And, we talked about this race and we talked about the race kind of favoring horses from off the pace, we thought. Wow, did they come from off the pace? Rich Strike was the winner. As you can see, he's way down there in the lower quadrant. He's a quadrant 4 square. We talked about squares being better finishers than circles, obviously. Zandon was the other horse who was a big square in quadrant 4. Mo Donegal, who finished 5th, was just right there to another big square. Epicenter ran well. He kind of got, I don't know what you think, Emily, but I thought he kind of got a good trip. I mean, he wasn't. I don't know if he wasn't fast enough or he's able to rate. Maybe I'm not giving the horse enough credit. He's probably more, rateable than some of the other speed horses, but he was able to sit off that duel and get first run on Zandon and also Rich Strike, but the Rich Strike kind of come up on the inside of him. He showed some grit against Zandon, but I don't know if it was more Zandon than Epicenter showing grit there. I thought maybe Zandon there's a possibility there's a distance limitation there for mile.
Yeah.
And then Simplification around 4th is just, you talked about it. He's just such a honest horse, isn't he? I'm growing to be a fan of Simplification. I wasn't.
Me too.
I'm really going to be a fan. Yeah. So so that was kind of the results. We had the right kind of handicapping analysis in terms of flow. It just kind of
we talk about that all the time because we're so results driven. I think it is good for a lot of people that have gone back and looked at, like, did I miss something? Could I have done something different? And analyze your results. And sometimes, like for me, and you, like, we were keyed around Mo Donegal, and I don't have any regrets about that.
No,
I think, and I thought he ran a good race. He just didn't get the right trip, kind of left himself with too much to do. I knew that risk going in. When you have a deep closer, it's like I know what I was expecting. And I knew what needed to unfold in order for that to happen. The horses that we had kind of keyed about being 2nd and 3rd and underneath, that's what they did,
Right. Exactly.
They did exactly that. It's just, could have, if Mo Donegal had run 2nd to Rich Strike, I would have messed up my betting and not hit that. And I would have been sick to my stomach. And that's
Right.
where I would, and that's where I reflect going forward, going like, I need to be a better that way. You know, I need to, that would have really put myself in a situation to where I maximized my opinion and I hit the race, you know, with the horse
Emily,
that I wanted to.
Emily, let's come back. We got let's
Okay.
add. Here we go. We got full tank Phil here. Hey Phil, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Terrific. We were just talking about the Derby, how we kind of analyzed it right, just didn't get the results we wanted, but wouldn't change your analysis. You got to play your opinions, right, Phil?
That's exactly right. And I feel the same way. Can't be too bent out of shape about what happened. It was pretty crazy, and a lot of attention on it, I guess, because of it. But as a gambler, you kind of just shake your head and say, all right, well, I have to get him next time. It was impressive to see what that horse did, even though I don't think too many people were on him.
No, obviously. Emily, why don't why don't you introduce Phil and talk a little bit about your relation, how you guys got connected, and talk a little bit, maybe Phil could talk a little bit about his show, his podcast and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you the floor on that. But I connected because I'm a fan of your podcast. I recently got into NASCAR. I kind of listened to your show, one of the first ones, and it was like my kind of benchmark. I listened to a few others, and I was like, nah, I think I like this one better. Like, this is sort of my opinion. I like the style. I like the focus on gambling, the way you analyze the race, the way that you kind of use the data, and then also, you bring in that subjective. And one of the examples, and I wanted to bring this up on your show, but now there's opportunity, is I think it was Bristol, where like you were looking at the data and really looking like Truex looks great. Like he's crossing like all your metrics, but then you could just tell like current form, you're like, I got to bail. Like I got to bail on this. And that's what we do in horse racing, right? With horse racing, it's like, we're looking at these horses and saying like, okay, yeah, they've got this, but their current setup isn't in line. And so that type of thinking like resonated with me. So I became a fan. I heard your podcast from last year that you analyzed the Derby, and I was like, you did such a good job on that. And then when, we kind of connected a little bit, I'm like, if you bring somebody on, like, it's me, pick me. And so we kind of connected that way. But yeah, do you want to say something about your show? And then I'll I know we don't only have a limited time. I'll bring up kind of the main reason I wanted to bring you on.
Yeah, absolutely. The show, is meant to be exactly the way you just laid it out. Like just looking at the track history each week, with not taking ourselves too seriously, but looking at the data and trying to make the best judgment, kind of like what you guys were just saying about Mo Donegal and the Derby. Like at Darlington last weekend, I had 3 picks that were really solid, and all 3 of them led laps. Neither of them hit, but I still feel good. I would make those bets again the same way. And each week, that's what we're trying to do, trying to find new ways to bet on the sport too. I know a lot of people in like my friend group, aren't really NASCAR fans. I'm trying to bridge the gap between like people who just love betting on sports and people who are fans of NASCAR. And I think that's happening a little bit, not because of my podcast, but I think because gambling on NASCAR, I think was a bit of a like offshoot thing, and it's becoming more of a mainstream thing. And I really find so many similarities between horse racing and NASCAR as far as gambling and but maybe we can get into that in a second. But yeah, it's a weekly show about gambling on NASCAR. So if that hits you the right way, give us a look.
It does. And it's a great show. And I know John will ask you more about that, but and you kind of like, you brought this in, is it's really coming on the show and the way I wanted to discuss it and, hear the feedback from your audience, which I do want to compliment you too, that you have such a good relationship with your community that you're like, hey, I'm going to bring this expert on something that's totally different. Check it out. And people trust you enough and took the risk and listened. So I want to hear like about that feedback, not from the example of like, I'm great. Our audience already knows I'm great. but for the example of like, if we talk about horse racing in a way that it's a gambling game, and for people that are already betting on outcomes, how to look at data, how to look at a different sport, and, be able to like kind of cross that bridge, take that gambling IQ and apply it to something different when you have a good set of data. And then of course, if you're getting, good expected value. So yeah, So yeah, I want to like kind of ask your opinion, just kind of first and foremost, like what kind of response did you get from people that were not horse racing people that listened, and like their feedback and certain things that we can take away to kind of build up a base from an already established sports betting base?
Absolutely. There were three different types of responses that I can give you, all positive. So the first that I'll tell you about is like my direct group of friends and family that I talk with every day. Some of my best friends never listen to my podcast because they just don't care about NASCAR. They listened this week because, you know, we get into the Derby and the Preakness and everything. And my close friends were messaging me like, that was incredible. They're similar to me, right? They pay attention to the Derby each year and get into the Triple Crown races. And so they educate themselves enough, and they were like blown away. Like, Emily was unbelievable. This was fantastic. Gave us great insight on, you know, what horses we should be looking at. Then I had people who interact with me normally on social media for the NASCAR stuff message me like, this is great. You know what I mean? I never would have thought that I'd be interested in the Kentucky Derby, but I wanted to stick around and listen to that part of the podcast. It was the predominant part of the episode. And those people who I kind of learned to, you know, become friendly with and trust, I'm getting great feedback from them. Then the third was a little bit surprising. Like, people who have never reached out to me before had said like, hey, never really gave your episode a look, came across, or your podcast a look, came across this because of, I guess, the word searches and everything with the Kentucky Derby and all that. And they were like, this was great. So the people, those were the three different like types of things, the way that came at me. But the most normal, or the most consistent thing that I heard was, you made gambling on horses less stressful, less terrifying. Because I think there's a bit of a, you know, education that goes in there. There's a hurdle there, and you definitely open that world up. I think, just talking to you the other day or last week, there were a couple things that you said to me. I was like, wow, I never thought about betting. You know, I was never tinkering with the key boxes and things like that. I know that's pretty normal in your guys' world, but I never really did that. And so the way you broke down the race, how to bet on them, the way you broke down each horse and reasons to like and dislike, what to look for, it hit so many different people. That's what the huge takeaway for me was, just the amount of like different types of people that you struck a chord with on the episode was just so cool. So it made me like so happy that you reached out. I was thrilled to be able to, you know, talk with you just myself. You know what I mean? That could have just been in a room, just the two of us. I wouldn't have cared. I enjoyed the conversation, to be able to throw things off of an expert like yourself. But to hear that stuff from other people was so satisfying. It made me really happy.
Cool. Hey, Phil, I got a couple of questions because I don't know, don't understand. I mean, I understand a little bit about NASCAR, but I don't understand how you bet on it. First of all, where does the information come from that you're assessing? What's the source of your information?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different sites out there. There's a couple paid sites that you can get like your data from. It's the Fantasy Racing Cheat Sheet, and they've been doing a lot more recently, where you can dive into a whole bunch of stats. It's the standard stuff like average finish and, you know, kind of how things are going, if you just look at like the surface level stuff. But they provide a whole nother level, a lot like what you guys do, and with the horse racing, driver rating, and then you can go as deep as you want, like stats like last 10% of the race, how are these guys doing, first 10% of the race, where's their average running position, a whole green flag speed this season, historic green flag speed. There's just so many different metrics that you can look at, and to me, that's what I enjoy doing. Like, you know, my grandpa used to wake up, read the newspaper, and have a cup of coffee. Monday mornings, it's just like, all right, let's throw the website up and start making some notes down of what metrics seem to hit me this week at that track. So that's the website I use. RacingReference.com is another standard that you cannot go wrong with. Like, it does not matter how serious or light you want to take gambling on NASCAR. Racing Reference is probably your first stop. It's free. They do a great job. It's pretty not really many bells and whistles there. It's just straight data. And I appreciate that part of it. So Those are the top two that I use.
And does that come directly from NASCAR, or I mean, do they sanction, or is it somebody else, an independent, doing this?
Yeah, those are independent companies doing that stuff.
Okay.
So as far as I know, I can't
But wait
imagine.
1 second. So like, but maybe. Okay, so I'm confused on that because the NASCAR will put up like kind of the stats like in running, right? Like on the feed, right? So are they collecting it and then giving it to these other companies, or are those companies taking that data?
So
Am I saying that right?
you're talking about after the race is over?
Like,
Right, but
historically.
I mean even during like each lap, right? It's like how many seconds off like the leader, and like position and cars passing and things like that. Like that data has to be collected by NASCAR, right?
Yes,
For it to be live.
Well, yeah. So the live stuff is as far as I know only through NASCAR, and you have to pay. The app. I think the NASCAR app. There's a lot to be desired there. That's a whole nother story. But the live leaderboard that NASCAR puts out on the app is one thing. Then you can pay NASCAR for like a fuller coverage of what you're looking at during the race. Those websites that I'm talking about are where I go for just like the prep for the next race. So the historical data, and I'm sure that they're pulling down the feeds from NASCAR when the races are over and just updating their site. So they're doing that probably after the race is over to update that track's information. Obviously, somebody like me, I'm not thinking about that. I'm already on to the next track. But yeah, they are probably pulling that down. They'd have to be pulling that down from NASCAR's feed.
That's what I would think. Yeah, I think that's probably the way it goes, because they're still compiling it, but they're getting that actual kind of raw data from the organization. That would
especially the
that's
fantasy
like
racing
how
cheat
horse
sheet.
racing. Yeah, right. Horse racing kind of does the same thing, and I know John, I've been working with you so long. It's like I know how your brain is going. I know exactly what your questions are. Like, okay, he's going this direction because we're in the information space of like where where that like raw information comes from, and like how people are compiling it and distributing it,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you trust it? Those types of things. The other question I had, because it's a point system, right? NASCAR, these standings, right? Every week, after every event. And I think that would play really important strategically. Like, are we going after it this week? Are we going after points? Are we going after a win? How's that? How do you analyze that type of thing, right? Because I got to imagine that's pretty important.
So that's a great question, and the response that I have for it is, I think the points start to matter. The end of the regular season with NASCAR is in the end of July or early August. Actually, it's the end of August this year. 26 races in. So I think the points conversation, if you're thinking of like, okay, we got two guys head to head, like which one is maybe more focused on the points? We have those conversations
this week,
for
this event
for this event. Yeah. Towards the end, it's Daytona that ends the regular season. They start the season and end the regular season. So when you're getting closer to Daytona, those races, if you're looking at two guys like head to head, or one guy to finish in a certain position, we definitely call that stuff out. Like, who needs a more consistent race? Right. Maybe this other guy. NASCAR has almost a win and you're in system for the playoffs. So if you've won a race, you're pretty good. You can kind of rest on your laurels for a little bit until the playoffs start, unless something crazy happens in the season, which I don't think that's going to. So win and you're in. So if you got one guy who maybe has a couple, one guy who's just desperate, that one guy who's in might be just, more consistent. The other guy's willing to take risks. So you definitely analyze that stuff. Not this part in the season, though. We're 13 races in, halfway through the regular season, or this will be race 13. So I'm not, as somebody who's analyzing this stuff, I'm not looking at that just yet, but it definitely plays a factor in the summer.
Hey, another question.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, another question I had, because it's something that we see with horses. Horses have styles, and I'm wondering, do drivers have styles? Like, are they like sit in the middle of the pack, go in the front? I mean, do they have styles?
The funny thing, so yes, they do. You'll hear a lot, like if you start watching NASCAR, you'll hear a lot of these guys grew up dirt racing in their background from when they were in a young age. And so you'll hear them talk about how the dirt racers, generalizing here, but a lot of them like to run outside, like up against the wall. They love that type of ride around the track. Doesn't matter what track you're on. And so if that groove isn't, working that day or something like that, then, or maybe it is, those guys have an advantage or a disadvantage depending on, what's going on. So you'll hear that type of style, the dirt race style, kind of just like sending it, leaving it all out. But you talk about hanging back in the pack. Certain tracks give life to that type of style. So the two big ones are Talladega and Daytona. They're the super speedways. You as a driver have to really play that track the right way. Do you want to, risk it and be up front and try to kind of lead the way and get away from the craziness that can unfold in the middle? Or Denny Hamlin is a guy, for example, he a lot of times likes to hang back for the first little bit, let the chaos unfold, and then he's there in the end, it seems like. So yeah, it's a complicated answer, I guess. I feel like I'm sorry if I confused you, but
no, not at all.
Yeah, not at all. Because for me, that's new, right? And I'm like trying to like apply my skills or figure out, if I'm handicapping sports can be a little bit different, right? So there's like a top down and then like a bottom up approach. So what we're talking about here is like that bottom up, like originator approach, where you're trying to come up with like your own idea and kind of vetting that opinion, right? So using that as I'm getting into it and starting to play and like what I know in horse racing and what I know about like racing, the things that when we're handicapping horse racing, sort of the way that we've modeled optics, it's like we've assessed speed, class, pace, and form. What are those aspects in NASCAR? That's what I'm trying to figure out, right? Like what are the elements that are like most important? How do I get that? Like, how do I get that down? And how do I use that to make bets, right? So that's sort of like where, this question of like how drivers run, like what is their running style? It might not necessarily be like, well, we think of horse racing as far as like, okay, this is a speed, this is a big pack, and this is a closer. But, this is a driver that does like to rally wide, and like being in that top line is where they're going to be most effective. Are their teammates going to set them up for that kind of run? Are they going to get stuck down inside? Maybe those are things that like I need to be thinking about, like handicapping or watching races or whatever. So hopefully that's relative. Maybe I just sounded really stupid, but anyways, that's kind of our question is like when we're looking at, because there are so many similarities with racing. And I think that is kind of what sort of binds it a little bit, or we find so many people like Michael Bachuk, my two worlds are combining, because races are like, there's stories, there's storylines, there's storytelling. And then there's, what happened last time relates to this time and what happened a year ago. And like what John was asking about intent, I've heard you mention this before, when certain drivers move to certain cars, right? Like the 20 car is always going to be the 20 car, but there's going to be a different person sitting in that car. What's the intention with that team in that car, right? So one of the things like I picked up listening to you is like Keselowski moved out of the 2, and like the intention there is like to bring Cindric up, right? To be like the star of their program, right? So are they pointing like this year, 2 years, 3 years, and sort of following that progression? I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, and that's where I think if you want to dive into it, there is so much meat to chew off here if you want to. And if you don't want to dive super deep, it still can be just as fun to you. It's almost like playing roulette, right? Like you could play the outside, play black and red, but if you really want to get crazy, you can play the inside and get really intense with it. That's how I see it. And to kind of hit on those points, like, yeah, you have to know what's going on with the story behind things if you really want to jump in and throw, whatever money is worth it to you on things. Cindric, jumping in, he's a rookie. He's taking over a good car. That's a storyline that I'm tracking big time this year. I wanted to see, is it Brad Keselowski that always brought that car success, or was it the team? And honestly, we don't have an answer yet because Brad has been really struggling and so has Cindric. So it's tough to see, but you want to keep that stuff in mind. The data you're talking about, the 4 different things that you guys track with horse racing, you can do that with NASCAR as well. Like you could just look at simple average finish. Driver rating is we talked about it, Emily, on the podcast last week, where maybe a driver doesn't get a great finish but was racing really well and got wrecked out, no fault of his own or whatever, blew a tire late in the game. Driver rating is going to reflect that. They're going to say like, he had a great race, just didn't get the finish. Green flag speed showing, how they were at a certain track. We're going to Kansas, right? That's a comparable track to Las Vegas. So I'm looking at who had the best green flag speed at Vegas to see if that gives us an edge coming up to Kansas. So there are a lot of different things that you can look into, like we keep saying, like with horse racing.
So one more thing I just want to talk about, because I know we only have like a few minutes. So I listened to your most recent episode. You had Skybox on, great guest, great interview. And you guys were talking about this discussion that we talk about with horse racing is how do you get more people in? And his answer, which I agree with, and with horse racing, a lot of people in horse racing agree with, is to like promote the gambling side, to promote that. And, expanding, if you mentioned it, like expanding the gambling menu. And then my brain went to the place that like, what if NASCAR was pari-mutuel? That would be insane. Like that would be like, totally different. But, and then it's funny that you brought up roulette, because I saw they kind of offered some new bets this week that are, you could take kind of this cluster of drivers and like, 4 drivers and it's one price. And horse racing tried to do that. They tried to like, quote unquote, simplify it, where you'd have like, they called it racing roulette. Your favorites were like black, and then the mid-price red, and the long shots were green. And the problem with that, and like I called it out and like got some pushback from the industry, was the way I'm seeing a bet this week is where they have 4 drivers and they price it 5.5 to 1 plus 550, where each driver in there is plus 1,000, 2 plus, a 10 to 1, 30 to 1, and then a 60 to 1. And I'm like, that is just like, then you're going to give somebody 5.5, like, yeah. I mean, the gambling part of it, like you have to step up, and then you have to offer good bets, which is like what we struggle with. But I did want to point that out. And John, I know you have a question.
No, yeah, I'm an edge guy, Phil. So I'm always looking for edge. And, we have one of the things we have in racing are called like clocker reports or morning workouts horses do. So you get a little insight of how maybe a horse is performing under the radar. It's become more public over the years. It's not really as formal as it probably should be. As you're assessing an up and coming event, do you know how like things are going for that crew? Maybe is the crew getting sleep? Is the car performing in the morning just prior to the event? Any insights? Is there anything available in terms of information on that?
The most straightforward answer I can give you is this year, forever, it was always practice and qualifying. COVID really put a damper on that. They got rid of it for 2 seasons, but it's back this year. So they have a session. Usually it's the day before practice and then qualifying right after. So that is the most straightforward answer is you look and see maybe, and this has happened to me a few times this year where I'm trying to get the podcast out earlier in the week so people can listen to it and,
right.
We can talk and all that, but I don't get to see that stuff.
Right.
So I kind of reserve the right, to say, hey, I'm calling out Truex this week. He's burned me a couple times where I'm saying I really like him this week because of his, history. And I think he's going to sort of turn it around. If I'm seeing him laying an egg in practice and he goes out and he qualifies 24th, I'm jumping off that train.
Right.
Like something's wrong there. And so that is, I guess, equivalent to a morning workout. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Oh, this has been great. And let me just ask you, there's been a crossover a little bit with horse racing and NASCAR. You had Dale Jr. on the NBC telecast. What'd you think of his performance?
So he's done it a couple times. I'll tell you this. This is the one thing I can say. I love Dale. I think he's put in uncomfortable situations. He's not really used. He's sort of starting to get more used to being like the broadcaster because he does the NBC broadcast for NASCAR. Teaming him up with Rutledge Wood, he is a clown. And so it kind of by default makes Dale look silly. But my parents watched that whole thing. My mom, for one, absolutely hates NASCAR. And they got actually a kick out of their little, bucket list items. They were doing the bucket list items. And they actually got a kick out of it. So I said, all right, well, if they can do something, then I guess NBC's on to something here. They interviewed Drake. That went viral a little bit. So I think Dale did okay. They showed Jimmy Johnson at one point placing a bet. Decent stuff. It's playful. It's playful.
Yeah.
I thought their segment, like as far as like kind of the more gimmicky type stuff, I thought they did really well. I mean, just, as far as like being like a casual fan and like it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
Enjoyable stuff.
It
I
just
heard
seems
him.
like that Dale Jr. has a likability quality. It doesn't matter. He could some people just you like them no matter if they're goofy or whatever. They're just likable. He's got that.
He does have that, and it's another thing. Like we talk about, like knowing the story behind and everything. The first time he did that, they threw him into that when he first signed with NASCAR. So he was doing a Derby before he even did a race for NBC. And I listened to his podcast. His wife is somehow connected with horses in Churchill. I think she went to college in around there. And so he talked about how nervous he was and gave us like the full breakdown of like everything that went down that day. And just hearing that like human side of things, like they're about to cut to me. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like that was cool. So I appreciate every time I see him on there, I'm like, good for him. Like putting himself out there. He's putting himself in uncomfortable shoes just to try to bridge the gap for people like me who like NASCAR and are getting more into horse racing. So I appreciate the silliness a little bit.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's been great. I mean, very informative. Listen to his podcast. It's Full Tank with Phil.
Yeah,
it's really good. And if you want to play NASCAR, it's a lot like racing. So we're finding that out. Emily's finding that out. So, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I know you have to jump. I mean, we'd keep you if you want to stay, but I know you have to go. And I told you I wouldn't hold you that long.
But I really appreciate the invite. I saw this. I was like, I got to make that work. I have to jump in with these guys. So,
cool.
Emily, thank you for the invite. John, nice to meet you. And I hope to touch base with you guys soon.
Okay,
yeah,
thanks
definitely.
A lot. All right,
Bye-bye.
see you.
Okay, wow. That was interesting, right?
So cool.
Yeah.
So fun. I think everybody got a kick out of that.
Let me go back to the Derby, Emily.
Okay.
Horse racing folks, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that segment. And for our new NASCAR fans.
Oh, Michael, Baychuk chimed in. He said, "My world's are playing." And I think there are a lot of people, and I mean, even if not, I think it's like when I jumped on, his show, you just hear different stuff, and it's interesting. If you're, a lot of people are in horse racing because they're smart people, they're curious people, they like to learn about things, they like to think about things in a different way. So. If he turned anybody off, I would be surprised.
He was great. So this was the plot. We talked about the plot a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about this was the focus report we put out. I just wanted to kind of contrast. Again, we're doing these odds. I don't know. I did them, I think, a day before, whatever. So the big problem here was the 21. I guess he got, he scratched in. And, Emily, in honesty, with my I didn't hit it, right? I kind of keyed around the 1 and the 10 in the race. You could see those are my top ranked horses. But I did replace underneath in 3rd and 4th and even 2nd, the 20 with the 21, because they were kind of in the same place. And I just want to go to this. This is a heat map for 2nd place in the Derby. So you can see there's a cluster of, Q4 squares that have done really well. And, that was kind of what I was playing around, just horses picking up tired horses at the end. Not necessarily, again, I wasn't predicting a horse to win, but I was kind of predicting them to kind of come up something like that underneath. So in the superfectas, but I just want to go back to the odds and, where I think, like you said, I wouldn't have changed my opinion. I thought it was on the right horses. I got the right flow that I expected. I got the right prices. It just didn't materialize for me, right? And to be honest, I really downgraded Epicenter, even though I have him ranked like the 5th horse. I had his odds at 12-1. I thought I didn't have any kind of edge betting him, but he did well. I'm not going to argue with that. So that was just kind of the assessment of the Derby. I think it's probably pretty good. I think that was pretty close to yours. I think the horse that I was really shorting though, that Cyberknife. I thought that was a crazy 14.9 to 1. He ended up.
I mean, I agreed with you on that. I agreed on quite a few of those horses. Charge It was like the one for me that I'm like, that horse looks completely one turn and has a lot of hype. I don't know where it is coming from, but that was one that I didn't want any part of at all. Like kind of those more like middle of the pack type horses. And then as kind of the week went on, I know when we did like our first initial, that big long through, upgraded the California horses 6 and 12. We did our final show. We ended up just really downgrading them just because horse race, so much happens in 2 weeks, like missing a work, just visuals, like both those horses I know. And I even mentioned it on here, like specifically, like why we were going to downgrade those horses, even though they were quad 1 squares, which typically do do well, kind of based on that current form, right? Like we were talking about with Phil, they check all the boxes, they look like they should be great, but there's that one thing that you're like, not today, you know, not today. And so, and both those horses, I mean, Taiba just, maybe he's better, lack of experience, but Messier was totally exposed. And I know some people are talking about him, and he had a subtle trip and he moved up into the hot part of the race. I reject that. I think he moved almost at the exact same time as Epicenter. He was sitting behind those pace setters and just had absolutely no finish. Crown Pride finished in front of Messier in the end.
Yeah, well, let's face it. Let's face it. The middle fractions weren't that bad. It was the first fraction that was the killer.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So those middle fractions. That's why, like Epicenter was like close to a hot pace. No, he was 8th, and and the second fraction was 45 after 21 in the fastest first quarter in Derby history. So I mean, they kind of backed off a little bit. So no, I'm sorry. I just think I think some of that's a little bit overrated. But we'll see. I'm still a little on the fence with Epicenter. I think he's a nice horse. I'm just not sure. I'm just not completely sold.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I'll say this. One thing that I can say with certainty, and it's probably debatable, but he's not a Derby horse. He had a perfect trip. He had no excuse to lose that race. Absolutely perfect trip.
Yeah, the
perfect
second
ride.
The second and third horses had no excuse. They both
no excuse whatsoever. Like he's not a Derby horse. That's the straight up, like the comments that are, I got in trouble for saying something a little cheeky to Vic Stauffer, but Vic is saying that horse Rich Strike didn't belong in the race, and if he wasn't in there, that was Epicenter's race to, he should be the winner. Steve Asmussen. No, Epicenter had every chance. He wasn't good enough.
No, Rich Strike ran better than those two horses. Period.
100%.
Not even
100%. Deserving winner. Deserving winner without question. Ran one of the best races in there.
He was a little mind that bird. That's for sure. Mind that bird ran out of his mind that day, and that's it. He won. Period.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to show a little again. Someone asked me. I don't know what it was. Some publication asked me, did a Q4 Square ever win the Derby? And I said yes. And it was Country House. It was a disqualification. So this is going to be the second one. So I said, yeah, if you in the last 15 years, if you played both of them, you have an ROI through the roof because they're both like $100 horses. One 163, the other was 100. But typically we see underneath horses there. But whatever, you got to. It's all about finishability going a mile and a quarter, and they've never done it, so we don't know until they do it. But I think form-wise, I think the plot held up pretty well. Typical, you're not getting any circles in quadrants 3 and 4, and that's about that. So I think we can put the Derby to rest. What do you think, Emma? And move on.
Yeah, agree. I'm trying to think if there's even a couple more horses. No, I don't even really think. I will say this more generally speaking, like putting the Derby to rest, because I've seen a lot of people that have just really overanalyzed doing the notes and commentary and things like that. And I think that stuff is really important. But the Derby is completely unique. They're never going to face 20 horses again. They're never going to have to go this distance again, and certainly not for the first time. So kind of a lot of that stuff doesn't matter going forward. Right. It's like almost, this is almost like you draw an X because it's such an outlier of a scenario of a race. And now you're kind of going forward, but taking this race itself almost with a grain of salt. Now, those top 4 finishers, you do have to assess a little bit more, right?
Sure.
Because Epicenter is going to come back. Simplification is going to come back, and assessing those horses, they're all going to come back doing shorter until they get to the Belmont. So, right. A lot of people, they're going to be better when they go shorter. Well, yeah, naturally. I mean, that's kind of the way it goes from here on out. But, a simplification, hard trying horse. But there's a point in the stretch where he saved a lot of ground too. He had a lot of cover. He had a fairly good trip, and he's kind of side by side with Rich Strike in mid-stretch and just gets out-kicked. I mean, he's a circle. He just doesn't have have that finishing ability,
I heard people talk about he didn't see the horse coming up on his inside. And, I understand that sometimes, but you got to realize too, trying to close inside horses, especially in a Derby like that, is really difficult. You don't see it. I mean, when was the last time you saw a horse close up on the inside in a Derby, other than Mind That Bird? And that was a little bit of a,
Ferdinand.
that was a wet day, But anyway, that's not an easy thing to do either. The horses usually on the outside have an edge on that. It's a little intimidating trying to close inside horses. So, a little bit, I can take that either way. I wouldn't analyze that or overemphasize, that you didn't see him. I mean, I don't know. He was, digging in. But I was really disappointed with Zane. I thought he was going to blow by the field. I mean, there was no excuse for that horse. I just think it might have been distance. That's the only thing I can think of. And it's going to be interesting. I guess early voting is going to be in the Preakness, I would assume. So it's going to be interesting to see him, because I think that horse has a lot of talent. And I think that'll say a lot about the Wood again if he runs well. And so Mo Donegal coming Belmont time might be another upgrade. Especially people who, Mo Donegal, people look at his race and said he couldn't close into this fast pace. So, why would we like him in the Belmont? I think he's more of a grinder anyway. And sometimes with deep closers I don't think he's really a deep closer. I think he was pushed into a deep closer kind of thing, and that's not him. I think he's more of a kind of mid-pack kind of closer. And just the pace of a Belmont will be where he would maybe be able to be positioned more mid-pack, and then make, that grinding, that sustained run that you need to win like a race like that, versus a Derby where a Derby you need to be a little bit more athletic, more of a turn of foot. You got to get in and out of traffic. You got to go start and stop. And I think that race may set up better for him if that's where they're pointing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'll just kind of touch on this, then we can move on, because I know you want to do some of these early races. But as far as, Rich Strike and Mo Donegal, because they were side by side, kind of heading into that far turn. So a lot of people are kind of going like, well, ground loss versus saving ground, that's the difference maker. And it's yes, but there's another key element to that, and it's being able to time that move. And so if you watch Rich Strike, he pushes the button on the horse to go way before Mo Donegal. Rod's kind of waiting a little bit, like a turf race, essentially, waiting for the quarter pole and then to go. And by the time he did that, Rich Strike had the jump and he had the momentum, because he's moving when horses are moving forward versus, when Mo Donegal's going, he's already given some of the other horses the jump that are closing, and now he's dealing with all the horses that are kind of coming back, and to where he's committed at that point to kind of swing wide. Right? Because it's, you're kind of committed at that point. And Mo Donegal ran well. I have no knocks, on his run at all. I mean, he's probably good enough to win if things were just a little bit different. They weren't, it doesn't matter. But and then like you said, I agree with that completely. He's not a one-run closer. He's not a Rich Strike type one-run closer. He is more of he's going to grind. He's got to get the jump on that horse. And if he has a jump on Rich Strike, I think he's going to grind out the
he's kind of a horse you got to ride.
And
you got to ride. You got to ride him, right? You can't just kind of you got push button. You got to just kind of get down on him, and I think you can take it. So it'd be interesting to see. So all right, Derby's done. I'm going to switch over. Are you going to hang on for a race or two or no?
A race.
A race. Okay, let's look at Gulfstream Race 1 then, because I think the other race ones are Belmont and the other one is Churchill. I think they're like 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds or whatever. They haven't been much racing, but this race I thought was a little bit interesting. When you first look at the plot, you see its speed rating's low, contention is low. 8 would look like he would have an advantage here in terms of early pace, but I want to look at the 4, Emily, because this is the 8. I mean, this kind of makes sense. This horse is, dropping significantly. So I think this spot's obviously going to be a lot easier. This horse, when you look at the range of 69 to 77, this horse has run much faster than this. So now, is this horse like done, or or is this drop going to do it for him, right? So you be the judge of that. But this horse is obviously a contender. He's right now, he's the favorite. I'm looking at the live odds at Gulfstream at 24 minutes out. He's the favorite. So that was the one I looked at. And then the 4 was the other one, because I thought from a pace perspective, he was the other one that could, kind of probably challenge for the lead. And his form looks bad, right? I mean, but again, let's look at it a little bit more context. His last race, he's off a layoff. His race before this was really bad, was on the turf going long. And if you look at his note, dual, no keep, and no push. So I wouldn't hold that too much against him. His race before was in synthetic, but against much better. He didn't run, he ran a C, but he ran a number 68, which is not too far off the low end of this range. So no, again, another horse with a drop here. And if you go back to his other synthetic race at Gulfstream, the one which would kind of be comparable to today's level, he ran a 76 with a lone. He was lone in that race. So I think he could be more forwardly placed. And, if he can get back to that race, I think with this level, I mean, he's definitely going to run within range. And he's currently, 15 to 1. Okay.
Oh, I like this. I like this quite a bit. I like that form cycle pattern. And then also, I mean, you key off that race. That race was first off a layoff. But it's back at a level that this horse has been competitive at, not just in terms of race power, but purse. And I mentioned this before, and we did like the pick six, just how crucial it is to have that early speed in these 5 furlong races. Like there's pretty much like quad one just like crushes. So if you're making the case that this horse is a quad one horse, which I can completely get there, just kind of based on that form cycle and at those tougher races, this horse has a big shot.
Yeah, and then the other one, I mean, like, so I think it's, between those two for, who dominates the early pace and kind of goes on. But I think if you were going to look for also for a closer in this race, I thought the number 3 was a little sneaky. He's had better than looked efforts in 2 of his last 3 races. He's fast enough to win this thing. He could be picking up pieces. His synthetic races are pretty good. So he's a horse that, 73 and 75 fit the range. If you just look at, we just filter on his synthetic races. He ran pretty good at 5 for this very trip, right, at this kind of level. So he's a definite horse to use underneath, but, maybe, if you're spreading a little deeper in the early pick 5 or something, might be definitely a B. You want to be using Henny Penny from off the pace. Those are the 3 that I thought were interesting in race 1. Okay. So that's, that was, Emily, did you have any, comments on the Oaks? Cause we didn't touch on the Oaks at all. Was that, it was, I mean, Secret Oath looked like she reestablished herself as top of the, the food chain there.
Yeah.
Right.
Another one that, had a good trip. To be honest, I need to look at it a little bit more, but I think it somewhat played out in the way that, we had discussed that it's a very contentious race. Could have gone
Yes.
1 of 5 ways. Really came down to, who got the right trip. Nest and Kathleno were horses that were just too short when you have a competitive group. So yeah, I mean, a good result. She's going to run in the Preakness. I think that's the right move.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really good. Looking forward to that. Preakness is shaping up maybe to be a fairly decent race, I guess. So, Emily, did you have any horses, particularly at Woodbine today, or Indian? What do they call? What do they call that track?
It's Horseshoe Indianapolis. They're running. We can pull up any race from there. Actually, I mean, I've done the full card. Just pick one. You can look.
Okay, let me.
It's.
Oh, I'm on the wrong.
You're on the wrong date.
Yeah.
They're not up for a few hours, but they can look at kind of anything in there.
What's today's date? 12?
12.
Okay. Any race in particular? Second race?
Let's look at the turf race, the 4th. I think some of those races typically we still have, weather's good. They just went on the turf for the first time yesterday. So we should be on the turf today. Nothing since now and then that I'm aware of. But a lot like Woodbine, and Indy, the way that I'm, handicapping these races, they're long meets. They both kind of kind of go the same distance. So they start in the middle of April, and then Indianapolis will end in early November. Woodbine will go to December, but it's still a really long meet for these horses that are pretty much, when they're here, they're here. We get some shippers, you know, on the big day, but for the most part, a lot of these horses, state-bred runners, they're here. So a lot of these early part of the meet, a lot of preps, a lot of short distance races, horses to follow going forward, horses that I like this circuit because they go, you know, form cycle is key. Horses that kind of go in, they go out, subtle changes, a half a furlong, a rider change, a post, makes all the difference in the world. And those are so nuanced. So anyways, yeah, so let's see. A mile on the turf, an optional claiming race. This is a state bred one or no? Not a, I do have a good price in this race.
Let me go pull the grid up.
Yeah.
You want me to stay on the
plot?
plot?
Well, actually, yeah, stay on the plot real quick, because from the plot fit, you know, it's a yellow plot fit. You can see some change of surface and distance, but it's a sun contention. There's a high speed rating. So we can look for horses to come from off the pace. We did see, I think it was a pretty fair racetrack yesterday, just in terms of how it played versus the results. So the horse I think that's interesting in here is the number 4. A horse that's kind of quad 2, quad 4, but has those horses above the par line, some contention in quadrant 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 9, 10, all front running types. There's a couple others that are in there, the 1. So yeah, so let's look at the 4. You can kind of start there. And then I'll talk about the 1 as well, because you'll like this. But counter offer, I mean, you could just see his, can you scroll over to the right? Because this horse was like picked up kind
Let
of.
me just I got this field here that I just need to eliminate, so that'll make it a little bit easier.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But yeah, just in terms of, okay, so you can see Kim Hammond picked up this horse 3 starts back, or 4 starts back is when they claimed this horse for 18. And since, you know, they've kept this horse protected at Turfway Park, you know, those optional claiming races, those are $64,000 races, more than twice of what they're running for today. Horse makes the first start at Indy. How I mentioned, a lot of horses will prep. April 26th, 5 furlongs on the main track. Right. Absolutely no business being in that race to win, right? I mean, look at where this horse has been running. Wants to go longer, preferably the turf.
Right.
Yeah. So this horse hasn't been on the turf since last year, last summer at Saratoga, right? Yeah. Those numbers are extremely competitive. And his numbers that he's currently been running are consistent with that. They're consistent in range. You can see the Optics figure range is lighter today the next time. So there's just a lot to like on a horse that's probably going to look not great on paper, because people look at the running lines, the finishing positions. Those turf races are buried, you know, buried down there. They're higher level races. They're competitive races.
Right.
Yeah, it just looks like, you know, positive intent was like, this is what we're looking for. We're going to run on the circuit. We're going to go long on the turf. They waste no time. And they go.
Yeah,
not good.
That almost looks like a prep, doesn't it?
Last time out? Yeah. So, yeah, again, just kind of form cycle. And then let's pull up the 1. I think the 1 is favored. And this is a horse that can certainly win. And why I said, John, you'll appreciate that is it's a horse from brought to California by Brittany Vandenberg, was a trainer that you mentioned that you said just didn't know how to place their horses in California, right?
You're right.
So if you kind of take that piece of information, you look at those California races, except for the Golden Gate one where he did well, he finished second, softer level. But those 3 Santa Anita races, you know, C+, just not competitive.
Right.
Prior to that, the horse was competitive at the different circuit. They recently tried to run at Hawthorne, which is a slightly softer condition. The race came off the turf, but you could just see the intention that this is where the horse can probably compete.
Right.
I'm just not crazy about that recent scratch, because obviously this is like their second choice, right? It's like, oh, we got to run somewhere, but this horse is certainly.
But it was off the turf. They, you know, so that's really the reason they probably scratched, right?
Well, yeah, of course, it's scratched because it's off the turf. But I mean, I'm just saying that horses kind of peak for a certain time, right? We're training up to
Oh, I
run
got you.
the
Okay, I
race.
got you. Okay,
And then when it's even just set back, even like 10
I got you.
days, you know what I mean? It can
Yeah.
make a difference.
I
But
got
yeah,
you.
I mean, it's certainly
Okay.
capable. Is in the right spot to compete. No
Yeah,
knocks, but it's going to be the favorite.
that's a good point. Yeah, I like that. Thanks for that reference. Mm, so, all right. So 4 looks like 4-1 looked like, was it 4? Yeah, 4-1 looked like.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I feel like if there was somebody else, I'm just trying to I think that 3 is fine. Getting class relief out of that most recent Keeneland race, has the early speed, probably could stick around for a piece underneath. I think the 7, who looks okay on the plot, might need a race coming off the layoff. And I think that's a state bred horse. I'm not sure. Can we scroll down if there's the 10? What do you want to look at?
So those words.
Oh no, not a state bred. No, I just think the layoff maybe.
Okay. Yeah,
Maybe needs a little bit softer too, but looks fine on the plot. Let's see.
So you would kind of anchor the 4 in this race, yeah, and then obviously the 1 could win the race. So you could, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see those other horses that are in there.
Were you looking? You want to look
at any horse that's like below. I think the 10 is an MTO maybe. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to key on the 4. I mean, if 10-1, the morning lines have been so bad, it's impossible to know. But I mean, what it's going to be. But yeah,
even if the horse
should be value in this race, regardless.
Yeah, sometimes there's value too, because you really didn't knock the favorite, right? You think the favorite's got a good chance. Sometimes there's real value if you like a horse like the 4 to play him underneath the favorite, because favorites, are going to finish, second, probably 50%, first or second, 50% of the time, whatever it is. So it's sometimes you can get really good value. So if, let's say, for instance, your 4 is 5-1, sometimes you can really increase that value of the 5-1 by putting that favorite in. If you think the favorite's legitimate, because if they are, they're gonna more than likely run underneath the second or third. So yeah, okay, cool. Where else? What about anything else? You want to look at the other turf race, or is there something else?
Sure. Yeah, let's look at that other turf race.
Okay. Race 6. They're about 11 minutes out at Gulfstream. 8 is still staying as 2-1 favorite. This is not the Gulfstream of the winter meet, right? So you got to watch the board. It really changes dramatically late in, but I mean the 4 is still 14-1 and the 3 is 13-1. So there's some value in those 2 horses. Okay.
So we got kind of a messy plot here. Red plot fit 100%. A lot of horses, first time surface distance. You can see on the right hand side, and even the standards kind of all over the place. There's not a lot of consistency with these horses where they're positioned on the plot. So we'll start with the 1, who is one of the more consistent horses on the plot. Square in quadrant 1, could have a little bit of a pace advantage. And I don't have actually any real knocks on this horse. It's run the same trip in those last 2 races, but this is kind of a completely different race when we pull up the grid. It's a softer spot. It's getting back on the turf. There's just reasons to where, especially with that plot, I mean, just the class relief alone just moves that horse up. There are reasons to be concerned because red keywords, like they're no finish. But I mean, just look, in terms of class, it's like I think they're putting this horse back where he can compete and win. And it's just they really haven't been able to find the right spot for this horse.
You think? I mean, I see like he's got like 3 turf races right prior, and you think there's no difference with turf and dirt in his horse in terms of form, right? It looks kind of the same.
No, he's kind of the same. I mean, you can look at the 2 races here from last year.
Yeah,
it's like the same figures he's running now. It's just I think it's putting this horse where he can win, which is probably here. But some of the other horses. Let's look at the 5. I think that was another one that was like a quadrant 1 square on surface distance. And this is actually, I was kind of like surprised at the plot, trying to figure out where, but it has those two races at Ellis, and really just the one race at Ellis, to be honest, because the other one was followed up by a layoff, so you can kind of excuse that. And
Right.
then the Indiana race back here in 2020, where it says weather saved. It's like, I don't know if you want to scroll over the extended comment, but that's like essentially an excuse.
Yeah. Just so you know, when you see that keyword, at least from my perspective, is you really could treat that with almost like you almost could eliminate that race. So good and bad, right? I mean, it's just those are like extreme weather conditions, and you know what? Goes back to what we were saying before with Phil. It's like those are conditions that probably, I mean, not with Phil, but with the Derby, that may not get created again, that situation. So I mean, it's such a severe weather day that's something that you want to maybe forgive horses or downgrade horses that ran out of their minds on days like that.
So you figure if he's running like in the middle to lower 70s, probably competitive. If he has that pace advantage, could certainly compete. Second start of the Forum cycle, he's second start off the Claim. And it's also an interesting barn because not only did this trainer claim, but this barn has been like almost completely dormant since 2014. So there could be intent just, we're starting back up, we got to build a barn, but this horse. So, I mean, should be a long shot in this race, but, you can get there. You want to go back to the plot? Yeah, I had to do a little digging on that one. A little outside the box digging. I'm trying to think. The 4 maybe is another one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, well look at the 4, and then the other horse in here is the 12. No, sorry, not the 4, the 11 and the 12. Okay. I think this horse will get a lot of attention because of the Gulfstream Park races. Right. I just think that the public will kind of gravitate there. Who are the connections and has races here at Indy?
Okay. Right.
Yeah, this barn does well. I just think that based on that. But let's look at the 12. This horse feels almost like that 4 in the other race. I think that's where I was. So the form is kind of sneaky, right? We have those keywords in there. Got the setup, whatever. But since then has run well, wide move, X flow. But you have to go all the way back to those turf races. It hasn't been on the turf since last year. Those are competitive numbers on competitive circuits. There's no reason why this horse can't run back to those.
Look at the Belmont race.
Yeah.
Saratoga, no cover wide, and he's still running 77. So
yeah, I think this horse is pretty sneaky in here, and has been given a rest off that Turfway Park season. Has the 41 days, so a little bit of recovery.
Anderson, I don't know that trainer.
Well, they've had this horse for the most recent races, and then if you want to scroll back over real quick, because it's not an owner. It's not necessarily. I mean, Trombetta and Live Oak had this horse, but Roboto had the horse like in New York a little bit. So they've had this horse for a little bit. I think the morning line will probably be where he is, and looks another one that looks good on the plot, kind of a square right in the center.
Cool. We're 4 minutes out of Gulfstream, folks. Again, people join us now. Just wanted to just pull this thing. Let's see if we got any questions or anything. Nope. Oh yeah. Number 10, contract training is scratch. Okay, tracing is scratch. I guess that was thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that. But let me just go back to the Gulfstream because we're getting close here. So this was the plot. We thought that maybe the early pace horses 4 and 8 had a chance. We went through the 4 and 4 looked a little sneaky, and then the 3 looked like a pretty decent off the pace horses. Hasn't really gotten the best of trips. Don't know if the race really sets up for him, but you never know if they can, if the 4 and 8 hook, maybe they could set up for the 3's late run, but definitely worth a shot underneath at 10-1, the 4 11-1 right now, and the 8's holding as the 9-5 morning line favorite. So yeah, I'd be on the 4 here, 4-3. We'll see. This is again the 8 where you would use them. Remember I would use them underneath or in tries, but try to key around the 4 and the 3. They're both good prices, both double digits. So okay, all righty. Anything else from Woodbine, Emily, that you wanted to?
It's a maiden race. I actually wrote about this race. If you want to pull it up real quick.
Which number?
Race 1.
Oh, 1. Okay.
It's kind of a rare, kind of a different spot to the normal.
You want
me to
the,
ride it?
Yeah, I mean this is.
Yeah.
I assume you want the grid.
Well, yeah, I think all the information's there actually because we've got lightly raced horses, but we talk about this all the time. I mean, the horses that have run are great. I mean, the one is going to be favorite, but he had a lone trip last out, didn't win. Like coming back off the layoff today, it just looks like a spot that if some of these first time starters have any run, they can pop up. And the 5 looks to be like the horse of the first time starters that has kind of the most positive intent of the group.
Which one, Emily?
The 5.
5. I mean, yeah, it looks like. I mean, the 3 had trouble to start, slow for the 4. I'm not sure that. I know the horse was lone in the last race, the one, but prior to that, he wasn't. He was. So
yeah,
it might be like no speed in this race.
Yeah. I think that was another thing that I had mentioned, like about the 1 is from the rail when you have a horse that maybe has some gait, whatever. I don't know. Just look like a spot that I wanted to kind of take a new face.
Yeah, that makes sense. And first time horses. It's been interesting, it's been a change like over the last couple of years in terms of like horses that you wouldn't think would win first time out are winning first time out in bad fields like this where horses haven't run to what I would think, the par would be for this kind of level and stuff. But it's, like, because most of the people are kind of focused on pedigree and maybe workout reports and stuff. And I think it's almost tilted things to like, you almost, if you played against that and went with firsters in bad races that didn't have that, I bet you would create an edge for yourself over the last 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yes. I do want you to pull up the grid because there is something in the grid that was a little bit sneaky. And what kind of drew me to the 5 is where they had, yes. And they had this horse entered special weight last year on the turf, which just tells you at least they're willing to not run this horse for a tag. Maybe he's not good enough, and eventually they'll get there. But at least there was some intent.
Now, that being a distance thing, let me. I'm just going to pull up the raw works. That being a distance thing, would that, worry you? In terms of the fact that they were going to start him long. They didn't think he was a sprinter. This is a 5 furlong race.
I mean, it honestly could have just been putting him in a race again for the reason that sometimes Woodbine is so long, especially if they just wanted to kind of protect the horse first time out.
Yeah. And maybe come back and drop him into a sprint or something. Nothing. I mean, nothing from a work perspective really jumping out, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't even know how they work. I don't know what the work patterns are.
Right. But I mean, just in terms of pattern, right? It doesn't have, it has the works from last year, right? That break that happened October 10th, 16th. Now it's coming back. It's just an even pattern. It's this horse is probably ready, went 3 furlongs, 2.5 miles, 5 furlongs, as good as,
that's a decent work to end it up on, that 5 furlong work looks decent.
Yeah,
no, it's cool.
Barn's going well so far with kind of limited starters this meet. It just seemed kind of like this could be the sort of right place and time.
What would be like fair odds for you on that horse like that? 5-1 or less?
Yeah, I actually run up race 2 so that people could play doubles because doubles are kind of the best bet at Woodbine. But yeah.
You want me to pull up race 2?
Well, is Gulfstream going on?
Well, we're 0 minutes out.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to keep an eye on that. Yeah, we can pull up race 2.
No, you said that you were kind of leaning toward double, right? Is that what you're saying with the 5 in the first?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 8 is 8-5 now, Gulfstream. The 3 is 13-1. The 4 is 12. Oh, that's some big odds on those 3 and 4, I think. Big odds. Okay. They're going into the gate, Emily, so let's hold off.
Okay.
Looks like a nice day in South Florida there. One of the states I've lived in. I was there when the whole grandstand was torn down. They were rebuilding Gulfstream, but they were still racing. It was the wildest thing.
Oh, that's weird.
It really was weird. They're in the gate. Oh, someone, I don't know who broke through there, almost tried to break through. They're going to go around and close the gate, I think, on that horse. It's hard to tell. By the way, Gulfstream's announcer is awesome. Consistent, enthusiastic, accurate. The best guy to call him up or off. I just think he's really good, Pete Aiello. I think he's really good. Okay, the 48 are competing for the lead. Looks like the 8's going to clear. They got a kind of a head on here. You got 8 clear.
Well, the 4's right there.
4's right there. 3's in a good spot for a closer.
Oh, I love this position for the 4. Love
this
position for the 4.
Just got to shuffle the 4. 3 just got shuffled out of it. Looks like he's taking kickback the 3.
3 looks a little ouchy to me.
Yeah, he does. Could be kickback he's taking too. 8 looks pretty good here.
Yeah, those quadrant 1s, I'm telling you, at 5 furlongs. 4, just no lead. Might get caught though. That circle might come into play. It's the right idea. This 2's going to pip.
2's coming up.
Yeah.
20-1. Oh.
Right idea, but yeah.
3 that never like 20. Well,
they're going to the gate at Woodbine, and we don't even have to do the double because the horse ended up scratching.
What's the who scratched the 5?
No, the 6 the 6 in race 2, yeah.
Okay, I gotta find Woodbine on my TV.
Oh, no wonder I had. So you're on your TV. So RTN is so much faster. That's why I knew what was happening before you.
Oh yeah. No, I have RTN on. I have both. The reason why, because when I'm doing notes, I could tape and I could rewind a lot easier than doing it on a. It's just easier to do trip notes for me.
Okay.
$10 to 1, Emily. I think that's fair value.
Almost a little too cold.
Yeah.
But I think it's because
it's kind of the point I was making. I think people go over certain either Clocker reports or pedigree and that kind of stuff, and I think if you I think over the long term, I mean, if you can make some money just kind of betting against some of those concepts, because I don't think it really.
You got gate on the 1. Frax just kind of reared up, ditched the rider.
And rough the crazy. Duel here.
Five's not run.
Five's getting the right trip, I think, you know?
Yeah, he is.
Because they seem they got to be going pretty fast to be out there that far in front.
Definitely see why they wanted to put 5 on the turf. He looks like a turf horse. Are we going to get there?
He's going to get there. He's going to
get there. Come on with this 5.
He won easy.
Boom. All right.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice job. Process of elimination. The one win.
Exactly. Process of elimination. I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, the one wins, and you're like, you just pass the race. You got to take a stat, you know, like, or if they win, whatever. It's like,
well, like I'm saying,
I'm never gonna bet that horse at a short price ever.
The value in these, there's been such value in these first time starters in these bad races. Like I said, I don't know what they're using for information is, you know, in terms of, you know, either their morning workout reports or something. But it's been a lot, you know. It's been a lot of opportunity. You don't know. I mean, just don't know how they're going to run the first time. And so you're just better off, you know, if your edge is that you didn't like the ones that run. And if they're getting played, that's an edge as far as I'm concerned. Because the 6 was the first too, wasn't he?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did he go off 10-1? Do we know?
They haven't put up the odds. I have to go back to the app.
I don't know why they don't.
They usually do. I don't know what's going on. They didn't have the fractions either. I don't know. Maybe there's like a malfunction or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The toad thing.
Yeah.
All right. So too bad we didn't get the second race because you could would have been alive and Emily's double, but that's all right. I did
get a win bet in, so there's that.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. That's a good win bet. Let's see what we. Okay, we got a couple of questions. Okay. Thoughts on number 2 in the race? Thoughts on the number 2? Okay, so this is what I guess. What were our thoughts on the number 2 horse? I guess is the question. Let me see here. Go back to that race. We have too many things open.
Which race?
Yeah, I mean, like what was the thing with the 2? Yeah, he sat good. I'm trying to think. Trying to go back to see what.
Oh no, the 2. I mean,
2 sat.
It looks fine. 2 looks awesome.
Yeah. I get. You know, I guess the thing is I didn't probably handicap it as thoroughly as I should have. I was kind of looking for especially when I saw those prices. This is the 2.
I think that happens too. We've talked about this. Is sometimes when you do your handicapping ahead of time, you do kind of miss that stuff when you just look at the board and you're like, let me assess this horse at 20-1.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Exactly.
You know, overlay.
Yeah, there was nothing. I think the only thing I would say is that you know, and it's it didn't really have any kind of established. You know, I guess the synthetic form was 2 synthetic races were kind of slow. I mean, 6th and 6th and 2 synthetic races. That one. But the horse did have trouble at the start of 1, and 68 was kind of iffy, but. Yeah, and that was off a layoff. I guess the other no, it was 68. Yeah, in a race like that,
I think it's really
too short. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think it's just
we should have definitely considered that horse, Wayne. I think it was Wayne. No, Darren. Okay. Let me just pull this up.
Somebody's asking about Pimlico.
Hey, here we go. Race at 3 implement. To my interpretation, appears to me that it'll be a closer flow, which ladders the 5. Maybe nickel. Okay. Let's pull that one up. What was it he say? Race 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a maiden race, so we got to have a lot of data to set up for race.
Yeah, you got a bunch of horses, I guess, going the route of ground for the first time. So. Don't know about that. Who's that, Wayne? I don't know about that. Can make that assessment based on the information here, right? It's just too little. Horses don't have haven't run enough to have established run styles. I mean, looks like the 5 of the ones that run have maybe have the best closing kick, especially at the distance, because he's probably the only one that other than the 3. So I don't know. This kind of looks a little more like the race we just saw at Woodbine. Are the horses that have run any good? I guess the 1 is going to be the favorite, and this horse has been sprinting. I don't know. We can't make that assessment based on that information, though. Okay. Anything else out there, Emily? Questions?
No. Do
Okay.
you wanna jump? Because we got notes starting. Or are you gonna stay on?
What's that?
I said, were you gonna stay on, or should we jump? Because
Oh,
I mean,
stay
I
on.
got notes going. I don't know about you, but
You doing notes? Okay.
I'm doing notes.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, you could jump anytime you want. I'll stay on for a little bit. I mean, I'll cover some of the other races. So thanks for joining us. And if you want,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks
great.
everybody for listening. That was cool.
And
we gotta bring Phil back.
So what?
We gotta bring Phil back on.
That was good. That was good.
Or anybody else from the sports world, or anybody in general that wants to jump on, hit us up.
Yeah, absolutely. Join us. Always willing to learn. Always got to be open to learning new things.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Thanks, Emily.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye. Okay, so we're back, and thanks to Emily for picking that long shot. Next up is, let's see what we got on the docket here. I'm just going to look at the what tracks are still. If you have any questions, please let us know. I'll put them up there. We'll review them. Looks like Gulfstream is the next one of the major track. Okay, Pimlico, I guess race 2. I didn't. Okay, the 3-1 there. Oh, so that's race. That was race 2. Yeah, I guess the next one up is the Gulfstream Race 2. Let's take a look at Gulfstream Race 2. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think there's any pace in that race, so let's take a look at that. Got too many. I'm going to just take some of these things down here. Churchill. Yeah, Churchill should be. I guess Churchill's running at night kind of thing. So I had some things there at Churchill, but looks like they're running at night. So I'm going to miss those. Let's go to race 2, Gulfstream. Okay. Yeah, I thought this race, even though this race has low speed rating, it looks like it's got some contention here. Look at the 2, 4, 6, and the 5. These are all horses that are EP type horses. If you scroll all the way to the right of the table, kind of gives you a little bit of more insight of the way these horses like to run. So what this tells you is this triplet, the way this horse likes to run is his good races. He's either an E or a P, and the farthest he's away from the pace is, you'll see, let me pull it up here again. So you got to kind of hover over and get it right here. You can see it's 0.13. What does that mean? That means he's got to be really kind of up close, at least in his previous races. He's been up close. So he's a horse that kind of needs to be very forward. And you can see the same thing with the 6 in here. Well, we don't have it for the 6, but the 5 is another horse that's up close. So these are horses, even though the 5's a square, that it looks like they're going to be competing early on for the lead. So it looks like this is a race that could maybe set up for a little bit of horse off the pace, and the kind of off pace squares in this race are 1 and 3. Let's see where they're at right now. So, back to Wayne's question, this is a race that I think is a little bit more doable in terms of looking for a horse off the pace versus that Pimlico race. But we don't have much in the way of horses with established run styles and horses that have actually run, going that long. So The 5 is the early morning favorite. I mean, it's the current favorite, 7-5. I didn't look at the double prices, so maybe someone can tell me, but I assume that's going to be the favorite. So I thought the 1 and 3 were a little tricky here. The 1 is currently 7-2. Let's look at race 2. Let's get to the grid. Oh, my slow machine here, so bear with me. Okay. So the off-pace squares. Let's look at the one first. Frankie's Girl. Frankie's Girl looks like getting back to sprinting and synthetic. Let's see this horse races sprinting. This horse has been very competitive sprinting. A first, a second, and third, 3 races on all different surfaces. I think that 87 is probably the best this horse has ever run. All races where the horse kind of came up from a little bit off the pace. So Frankie's Girl looks like, you know, getting back to sprinting might be a good thing for this horse. You know, his last race was a sprint, but those 7.5 furlongs is a 2-turn sprint. It's not really a sprint. It's more like close to a mile race. And it's kind of an odd race too, where they put the poles and stuff. You know, it's one of those races. It's kind of an odd, you talk about 7 furlongs being on distance. 7.5 furlongs is the oddest distance. Not too many tracks even run them on the turf, but Gulfstream is one of them. Time before that was going long. Ran a decent race. Again, that was off the turf and they onto the synthetic. So that was a good race. So this horse actually does like synthetic. Run on surface doesn't matter to this horse. He's okay. And he's okay sprinting. So, I mean, this is a horse that, you know, he may be a little bit more out of it, but obviously with a setup like there is expected, you know, obviously a value, you know, right now, 4-1, I think he's a good contender, you know, good price at 4-1. I mean, that seems like a fair value. I don't know what the doubles are, but I mean, that was it. The other one's a little bit longer. It's the 3. This is a horse that looks like, I don't know if it's like a level move or not. It might be dropping just a tad. This is kind of like his 5th race in his form cycle. You see that 90 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4th race in a form cycle, coming back in 14 days. A little bit of a improvement in numbers, but nothing significant. Looks a little slow in terms of numbers, but has some back numbers that would be able to compete. So let me just take a look at this horse sprinting and see what his numbers are. Yeah, so I mean, he's been able to sprint and run good enough here to, you know, like the 84 would be good enough to win this race. So not bad. I mean, a horse at 11-1 who probably looks like he's going to get some pace flow. And that big race, by the way, that he had, he closed. He did get flow in that race, that Monmouth race. So he's a horse that can close when he gets the right pace flow. Seems to be able to get it today. You know, he's okay. He could run on, you know, another horse that could run pretty much on any surface. Doesn't look like there's any differences between them. So that's a horse that's viable, 11-1. Let's see if there's been any recent changes. And this is his 3rd start with kind of new connections. 2nd time with this jockey. So, and he saw in the first race, it looked like the 8, you know, had a kind of an easy lead and stuff. And he's still backed up. So, I know Emily kind of was talking about quadrant 1. Let's look at that, because I know that's the case for 5 furlongs on turf sprints, but I'm not. Let's look at the quad percentage. I'm not entirely sure that's the case. Yeah, I don't think it's dominant. In fact, you know, let's look at the old plot. If you go to Plot Classic, I'm gonna go to Gulfstream. This should tell us. So I'm going to go race 2. There's I like the quad percentage because I just like to compare, but I'm just trying to get a general question answered here. So I'm going to go to quad stats on the old plot. We don't have those up. Yeah, we've kind of taken that away. We have to update that. Yeah, I don't know if it's the same advantage as it is on the 5 furlong turf sprints. And it doesn't look like that based on just, if you look at the quad percentages, there's no one really that has that. You would expect if someone had a real edge, all those bars would be above the line. It doesn't look like there's a really big edge. Looks like quadrant 4 might be a little tough, but this again, this is kind of like the Derby, right? The quadrant 1s do better, but there's certain scenarios, there's certain pace flows, and this one, like I said, we got the flame, we got contention, we got horses with run styles that are similar. Something's got to give a little bit there, so that's kind of the reason for looking at both the 1 and 3. Okay, good. So let me see. I'm a little disappointed because I kind of handicapped a little bit. I looked at Churchill, but let's look at Belmont. I know Belmont's first race is not so I'm going to switch over to race 2 at Belmont. I think this is race 1. Yeah, so all the firsters. Nothing to really go on there. All kind of running for the first time. So it's going to flip over to race 2. Thought there was something to look like there. It was a red plot fit, so very difficult to assess. But you can tell that there's really kind of like hard to assess what the pace scenario is going to be like in this race, right? Because there's no one really that's dominating this. Let me go over to the grid. The one thing I would look at is if some of these off the pace horses could close into a slope guy, because like I said, there's really no pace. This is odd, right? Because horses may change their intent on something like this. The riders may, a trainer may say, look, this was not a speed horse, but there's no pace in here. Go for the lead. Try to win it that way. So it's a tricky read when you look at a race like this. But I don't know if we're going to be able to find someone who maybe can establish that. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to do a filter on surface and distance. So how do you do that? Okay, so you have these optics filters. I mean, this race filter. So I'm looking for today's surface distance, just to kind of get a gauge of which horses kind of prefer this kind of surface and distance. And, to me, when you look at this, it looks like the 1 is done very well. This surface, there's a 1-turn kind of mile. This one's a little bit extended mile. No, this is a 1-turn 8 furlong mile. But this horse has actually run and won even the extended mile. So this horse has done quite well, and it is proven at this surface and distance, okay? Where the 2, again, another horse that's run, maybe his recent form, he's coming off a 187-day layoff. But he's at least, again, just trying to assess from a surface and distance standpoint. The biggest figure the 3 ever ran was doing the 1-turn, 8.5 furlongs is a 1-turn mile, a mile and 16th at Belmont. The 4 looks like he's, been capable of doing some of this distance stuff. The 5 looks a little interesting. Looks like the 5 has not fared as well. What did I do here? Surface and distance, right? Maybe I just did surface and track. I'm sorry about that. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do surface. I did surface and track. So, okay. Sorry about that. Reset. Okay, the 1 talked about, looks like still he's done well at today's surface and distance. 5, the 2 it looks like a horse, and we'll get back to form, but that horse looks like he's, coming off a long layoff. The 3, not so much. Hasn't run, I would say, his best race. In fact, the only win he has surface and distance was 2-turn at Finger Lakes. So this horse really doesn't kind of fit the profile from a surface and distance standpoint. Neither does the 4, 5. So when you kind of look at this, you could see that maybe the 1 and the 6, and the 2 a little bit, but again, 2's form might be there. But the 1 and 6 seem like they kind of could fit the profile in terms of surface and distance. Okay, so let's go back to the. Let me clear this out, and let's So if, again, suitability to the track, surface distance, looks like the 1 and the 6 look the best in terms of that's concerned. The 1's coming off a layoff. And you can see that he got kicked back in his last race. Let's see, we're at, just so you know, we're 8 minutes now, 7 minutes now at Gulfstream. So, and it looks like the 1 and 3 are still holding around the same price. 5 is being well bad. So this horse had kickback in his last race. We've talked about this before. That's generally a horses improve dramatically the next time. They don't get kicked back. So this is a horse that you run a 77, gets a little bit of a kind of a class, caught back. Again, proven at this distance. So you can excuse the poor performance last time on kickback, the 7th place finish. Maybe this horse has a legitimate chance. He's been able to run in the past. Numbers obviously good enough, even better. So he's morning line. He's 5-2, so no bargain there in terms of price, but obviously a contender. Let's move on to the number 2. Tough to back horses come up. It's interesting that they tick them up a little bit in price, but 187-day layoff for this horse. Typically, it's a little hard to get behind this unless you've seen something in the past where this horse has come run back and off a layoff. That doesn't show. Like this horse doesn't get. That's not kind of the style. This horse usually runs his best races, I think, when he's in form and has a form cycle already established. So kind of negative on him. The 3. This was the one I said, his kind of numbers are slow, and his only really good trip at a mile, like distance was 2 turns at Finger Lakes. I'll go back and look at the plot, but I was kind of negative on him. Joycey has pizzazz. This horse looks like his form is on the kind of decline, but he could trip out when you look at the plot. He's more tactical than maybe some of the other closers in this race. You can kind of sit a trip. So I wouldn't, especially with no pace in this race, he just might trip out. It's just not crazy about his kind of recent form, but of course I would, consider. The 5 is this horse, again, doesn't fit why I went through the suitability. This horse to me looks more like a closing sprinter than a mile horse. So that was my negativity on the 5. And then the 6, it'd be interesting to see what the board is. The 6, this is the weather thing, right? Let me look at the extended comment on this. And we talked about this before, weather being like extreme weather where you can really take it with a grain of salt, both really good performances and really bad performances. You notice in those really bad days where the fields are sometimes stretched out, horses are being eased at the end. It's just messy. That was that kind of day on May 7th. Inside, but that was not the place to be on the track either. So horse was inside on a day probably more favorable to the outside. Now it's coming back quick. He's obviously fast enough. It's going to be about price. He gets a massive drop, jockey change. He probably is going to commit to the front. I would. I mean, if I was him, because there's just no pace in this race, and they just may go with him. And I think that jockey change will. I think that's the intent, especially with that jockey change to Gomez and Castellano. I think they're going to go to the front. So 6 is going to be probably no value, but I think the way he plots may not be the way he runs. So this race is really kind of hard in passing. So I think that the things I take away is the 1 is kind of suitable to the distance, expecting to improve, just not a lot of value there. The 6 may commit to the lead and could just be gone, and then the 4 just may trip out, and then the others not so hot. Okay, so that's not offering you anything much there, but that's race 2 as the way I assess it. Somebody else asked too out there about information about the notes and how to read them. And again, I really have to recommend you go to our homepage, and that's where I am right now. And you go over to info and you go to notes, and there's a lot of good information. You get the quick reference guide. And the quick reference guide really basically is just tells you kind of what the stuff means, right? You know, like what's the description of the things and, you know, all the rest. But when you get to the frequently asked questions and the user's guide, they're going to be a little more telling you, you know, maybe how to approach things. In actually the user's guide and the FAQ, let me go bring that up. There is a section. Yeah, I don't have it. Let me see if I can bring it up. Now I can bring it up, but man, no. But anyway, if you go into the, let me just do it. Go to the user's guide, open it up, and you scroll down. I think it's a section called like applying or using notes. And it, you know, gives you all the stuff, you know, like just what's in notes and stuff, you know. So using Optics Notes, yeah. So, you know, someone asked about, you know, how do you use this, and, you know, because, you know, we're going fast. Some of this, it's so intuitive to us and the way we use it that, you know, sometimes we skip over things. And, you know, if you're new to this, it's confusing. So I understand that. So this using Optics Notes will tell you some of the positive things and negative things to look for. Okay, so I think it's a good starter. And, you know, I think after you go through some of these videos and listen to us and all the rest, maybe go back. I'm not saying you have to go read every single thing, but just peruse the documentation. It's really good. It will help, I think, solidify some of the concepts that we've been putting out there for the last, you know, whatever, 5 or 6 years now, I guess. So yeah, so that's a great section. And again, the info, you can go for the plot grid, same thing, right? All the products pretty much have a quick reference guide, user guide. In fact, in the plot, we go into things like videos on kind of how to assess, how to read the plot and all the rest. So good stuff, especially for people who are new and want to understand this stuff and say, I don't get it. I think that with some of the videos and some of the race of the day information, I think what, you know, if you can go back and look at documentation after the fact, sometimes it enlightens you. It sinks in. And again, not to read everything, maybe look for certain highlights, search on things. The information's there. It's pretty good. I think it's in a nice format. It's readable. It's visual. That's that. Okay, we're 2 minutes out at Gulfstream. Currently, the 5 is, whoa, is he getting bet? 3 to 5. Okay, I mean, like, he does plot as a square. Maybe he can stalk the pace and get maybe the first runs of the deep closes, but and the 6 is the second choice, which is logical. Okay, 6 may be the speed of the speed. In fact, you know, 6 might be even better than the 5. I was going to use any of the early pace horses. You know, I might prefer the 6. But anyway, 3 and 1. You're kind of quadrant 1 up against, but you're getting value in both those horses, I think, at 5 and 13 to 1. So, you know, maybe fool around with a try or exact box 163, 136 box, and try to beat the 5. 'Cause I don't know if the 5, especially in a race like this, you know, has that much of an edge. I guess they're playing the connection. He's coming back for 14 days after finishing second, after making an easy lead. I think he's not going to get an easy lead today. And we shall see. They're approaching the gate. They're on synthetic. And we talked about it a little bit too. The synthetic track isn't just another wrinkle that is a Gulfstream. I think just from watching the races and playing some of it, it's behaved fairly. I really, it seems like to be a pretty good synthetic course. Some of these synthetic courses sometimes, especially with you would think with extreme weather like in Gulfstream, with the heat and stuff and sun and the rains and stuff, but it's played pretty consistently and pretty good. And, no complaints. I mean, good job for that maintenance crew. We've done a good job with all 3 surfaces, keeping them in shape. And with all the year-round racing they have. So kudos to them. I don't think some of those track people get enough credit, especially from a safety standpoint. I don't know the numbers, but just in general, because I watch a lot of Gulfstream, it seems like they do pretty well in terms of injuries and stuff like that. But again, no way to assess. I still do know that the synthetic tracks are probably the safest tracks from a catastrophic breakdown perspective. So, all right, so they're waiting for the number 5. That's our favorite. 3 to 5. Choose to be happy. And then we'll, I guess, can't see, but I guess there's, I don't know, it's the 4. Somebody's giving some. Still loading. So yeah, so if you have any other questions, let us know. Let's see if we got anything else. Okay. Then a Roth, so 2 makes the front. 4, 2 are going at it. Well, it's kind of based there. The 1 is sitting inside the 5. 1 seems to be getting it correct. Sitting right behind the speed duel. 5 is no bueno. This is the 1. I mean, the 1's getting the setup. And then we got the, well, 1's got the setup here. You're going to go buy this 4. Yeah, he's going to get by. 5 was just kind of one paced. So 6 to 1 on the 1. Didn't get our exact. The 5 did finish second. 3 and 6 disappointed. But the 1 was, one of those horses that we talked about. 6 to 1. Perfect trip. Perfect trip. Perfect trip winner. So good for the 1. Frankie's girl. Yeah. So yeah, that was value on that race. I mean, you got the perfect trip set behind the 2 and the 4 went at it. The 5 was a little bit wasn't as forward, and the 6 really never was. I don't know if he broke or didn't break or what his deal was, but really disappointing. And we really got no running from behind, other than the 5, making up some ground in the stretch, but just wasn't good enough. 1-4 in race 2. Yeah, cool. So let's go to, let me see, I'm going to span the globe here. Well, let's, I mean, I don't know if I missed the Woodbine race here or what. No. Okay, so the 4. You're going to win there. Oh, 2 and the 4. 2-4 at Woodbine. All right, I'm going to go to Pimlico. Someone asked about Pimlico. I don't have an opinion on this race because I guess the question on Pimlico was about the plot and did it favor the 5. And I said couldn't tell based on the lack of information, like a run styles, lack of races at today's distance. But it looks like they're making the 1 a huge favorite, and this goes back to the thing Emily talked about, in terms of these, first-time starters versus horses that are run already and stuff. And it looks like this horse, he's had 3 chances. So he had some gait issues. He had a clean trip, okay? And in a maiden 25, let me just go through this. How's this horse? On the right race. Yeah. Okay. So they're running for maiden 40. Looks like the 5. The problem with the 5 to me is he's lost below this level twice already. So, this could be another situation where, the horses that are run aren't that good. I guess the thing I would be looking for in these types of races is horses that, are dropping like the 6. To me, he's 5'2". I would prefer him over the 1 who's long. I don't understand why we have the 1 as a winner here. Okay, I'm a little confused. We got the 1, even though he's a maiden. He's running in maiden claiming races. I don't get it. Maybe if someone knows anything about this, or where's this past performance? Is something wrong with it? So the 2 is another horse that dropped. Is dropping from maiden special. Didn't really get bet in his debut. Looked like it was intended to run sprinting on the turf. The 7, at least the 6 went long, 7 furlongs. Didn't run a bad figure, competitive figure. You would think with the drop alone, this horse has got improve for grand motion. Going 2 turns, is going to kind of extend out. I mean, and then the 6 is a firster. It's tough to win 2 turns at firster, but let's see what the price is. That horse is. That's the 4. He's a long shot in this race. Again, I don't know. Again, I'd probably be looking at the 6 in this race. Just try to take advantage of. So if I was playing like a double or a multi-race bet, probably try to take a chance with the 6 over the versus the 1. Again, the 1, I don't know what that. I mean, I know he's got some speed figures in the set, but again, it's another horse stretching out for the first time. Completely unknown here, right? Complete unknown. So, yeah, I think the 6 looks like. I mean, the 3's lost races below today's level too. I mean, yeah, I think if I was if I had to bet this, and on my quick assessment, I'd probably be keying the 6 and the double and multi race wagers here. I didn't even get a look at him on the track, but I don't know. It just seems like more apt to improve after debuting versus better. And actually, the horse was 5-2 in his debut, so he was bet. See if there's any kind of recent works on these horses. 2 had some recent bullet. That was the other horse that ran against maiden special weight. So maybe he improves too. So 6-2. Yeah. Okay, they're off at Pimlico. So it looks like the 2 is going to show their lead. 6 and the 1 are going to handle. 6 got caught a little bit wide on the first turn. It's in stalking position. So you get the 1. 3 just had to take up a little bit, and he was caught in the pocket there. The 1 is being pressed by the 2 moderate, fairly moderate first quarter, 24-5. I don't know, for the level, it's probably just a little bit below. 2's ramping up the pressure. 3's stalking. I think the 3 is going to have a wide trip here, but may not matter. We'll see. 1 looks decent. Looks like he's $49, almost 40, almost 50 for the second half. So they're not going too fast. So they haven't really changed positions here. The 1 being pressed by the 2, the 6 stalking. The 3's 6 under a ride already, so that doesn't look encouraging. They're on the turn. coming out of the turn. Yeah, it looks like the one's gonna, well, one looked like he's gonna win, and then the 6 is just put into another gear right now in the stretch. So, no, it's gonna be tight. Yeah. Well, 6-1. Yeah, that's, I mean, there's a lot of value in multiple races when you beat one, and that's really all I was trying to do. And no really love for the 6, just trying to make a play, and that was kind of the play I was trying to make. And I don't know what the final odds were, if they were closer at the end, but it looked like the 6 was done. He's on the wrong lead. Then he switched over to the right lead and kind of showed a burst. Then he looked like he was going to blow past the 1, and the 1 kind of dug in. So 1 ran a good race. 6 was just better. Probably just a little more of a classier animal than the 1 is. Okay. Let me just see if there's any questions. No? Okay, good. Good. So, hey, so we're on a roll here. We're on a roll. I think we've had 3 winners here. Emily's had a big one, but we're not trying to pick one. We're trying to educate. I'm trying to see how to play, and it's good to do it live, I think, so you can get a real feel for, to Emily's point on that race at Gulfstream, we probably should have just reassessed each of the runners when we're looking at the odds, and not get bogged down, just like we did in the Plymouth race. I think it's easier to kind of sometimes do things that way and stay a little looser and not be so, you have an opinion and you got to use your opinion, but it's got to match with, what you're trying to do in terms of odds and payouts and so forth. So Belmont is a while away, so we're not going to look at that. Probably going to take through to Gulfstream 3. And then that would be it. And then I might point out, let me see if I got a, yeah, I would wait on the Churchill races, but yeah, let's look at Gulfstream Race 3. Hopefully you've seen certain, you see us handicap enough, you see certain things that we look for and apply a lot. Then like I said, you go back and read some of the stuff so you can kind of get it in context. Because, in fairness, I mean, again, we skip steps, I think, sometimes. And, we get to the end quick and you're like, well, how did you get from A to B? I completely understand that. And that's why I think it's good to go back and watch, and look at the documentation. But also, there's if you go to our, let me see where there's a lot of videos I did where I kind of focused on things to look for and how to use the information specifically. I think a little bit more geared to that. And if you go to our YouTube channel, right? So if you can get to it from media, from the from here, and then you go to the channel, and you'll see us actually probably broadcasting on it, I would imagine. And then if you go to some of the videos, like I did a lot of race of the days, and back when, and I think there's a lot of good technique type stuff in there. Also, if you look under some of the older stuff I did, there's a bunch of stuff where I kind of did things that were specific. It's a lot of information there, so you can, I would even try searching if there's a particular thing you're looking for, like notes or something like that. Try to search. There might be something there. So yeah, so that's another place to look for. Let me go to race 3 at Gulfstream. Yeah, this will be the last. I did look at the first 3 races at Churchill, but without knowing how the track's playing, in terms of the weather and all the rest, it's hard to kind of gauge that and the odds. So I don't want. I think they start late tonight, So maybe for Churchill fans, we'll do something earlier in the day when they're running that early in the day. So, all right. So this is Gulfstream Race 3. Looks like the morning line, at least the favorite currently is the 8. We'll see who's the favorite in the. So the other thing I would say is, it look like you want to be finishing on. Yeah, I think you want to be finishing on that synthetic curve course, especially if the squares do well there. Okay, so this looks like the double is favoring the 7. So it's close between the 7, then the 8, and then it looks like the 1 is the third choice. So just looking at the plot, I don't give an edge to any one of those. 7 looks like that horse is been not even on turf. So let's go to the notes on this race. Let's go to the grid. Yeah, so the plot is messy. No one really established here. This is one of those, another maiden special weight type races. So the horses, you have the 2, 4, 6, 7 have been run at today's surface and distance. The 4 is the first, actually. So let's look at this race a little bit more closely. I'm going to just get the time. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, come back, and we'll handicap this race. I'll take a 2-minute break, and then I'll come back and we'll go horse by horse, and then we'll finish it up at Gulfstream. And if anybody else runs in the meantime, we'll pick those races up. Okay? Be right back. Okay, I am back. And so we're reviewing race 3, 15 minutes out at Gulfstream Park. And the number 1 coming right back after 18 days. This horse is moving up from a maiden claimer to a maiden special weight. Okay, so this horse, I don't like that. Okay, to be honest with you. His 1 maiden special weight was his debut. He did have some trouble to start, but finished 9th. Now he's going to get back to a maiden. Now, let's face it, a maiden special weight in February versus a maiden special weight in May is night and day. So let's be fair. But still, he's too long. He's improving. I mean, he ran a good figure, but now 18 days back and up in class. I don't know. Not my cup of tea kind of angle, but let's look at some of the other horses. It's all relative, so we'll come back and maybe we do upgrade. Hunter is a horse that ran April 15th. Don't know where his note is here. But anyway, maiden claimer, $16,000 level now, moving up. First time turf. Okay. I think he's a race filler there, so I'm going to pass on that. The next horse is horse that's, at least this horse has been running in maiden special weights both times, but it's been slow out of the gate in both starts. Never a good thing. So this horse, I really don't want to put real money on this horse until he's got this kind of straightened out. So a little negative on the 3. The 4 is a first-time starter. Being Cohen, I don't know. So far, you could do worse. I mean, it looked like they tried to get him on, on a race. Looks like last year. Question mark. Come back to this horse right now with the way this field looks. I wouldn't completely ignore the 4. The 5 has had his chances at lower levels and has been unsuccessful. Not a horse I really want to spend too much money on. 6, debut on the dirt, main claimer, nowhere. I mean, did he get? I always look at these horses get bet in their debut. Took some action, I guess, 8-1, but we didn't. The other thing I look for as a notes player, I look for if we have any kind of qualifier, like a projection, like a turf question mark or stretch out. When horses are stretching out and trying to turf for first. I don't see any here, so I kind of view that negatively. The 7 is Stat. I think he's one of the favorites here. But yeah, he's got the same thing. He's trying to turf for the first time. I know he's run on synthetic. That's not exactly the same thing. He's another horse moving up in class. So the 8, 3 C's, all at the main special weight level. And this is your favorite, at least your morning line favorite. Second choice looks like in the double. Trouble to start in 2 races. I mean, this race is tough. I mean, this nothing's jumping out. And then we have the 9 who ran his debut, maiden 40, and ran a pretty good race. But he's from Live Oak. Cassie was played his debut. I think we're gonna have to dig a little bit here, but this might be one of those crazy races that might be. Let's go back. I think it was the 8-7 with the doubles, right? I think who were the best. How they played this race in the doubles. Yeah. Okay. So it was. Order was the 8. 7 was the favorite in the doubles, followed by the 8, the 1, the 4, and the 9. So the 9 was 5th choice in this race. That's interesting to me. So one thing I would, it's 14 days. I want to just drill down in this race. Let me just look at this race. And the way if you want to look at this race, the chart on this race, you just double click. It'll bring up the plot. And you can see, it's kind of a messy plot. And then if you want to bring up the grid, this is what I want to do. So you click the grid. So you just get back to that race by just double clicking the one line for that horse. People that kind of know our stuff kind of know that, but to those who are new, this is where you get chart information. So this shows me the field. So what I like to do is just look at what's happened since that race. And none of these horses, they came back quick. So none of these horses came back and ran after that. So hard to assess. Going in, the only thing I would say is I looked at the optics fig range of the race with a little light, 61 to 75, which is below today. Okay, so yeah. You can see the fig range of this race is much better. The turf race that the 8 comes out of. But again, trouble to start. You want to take this horse what's currently 9-5. He'll probably float based on the board, but he's being picked by everybody. So it looks like the action is all going 7, 8, 9. But I noticed that the 1 double is low, and so is the 4. So I'm going to look at those a little bit more closely. So now, like, as I said, I went back now, looked at the rest of the field, and I'm like, okay, no one's really established. So now I'm going to be a little bit more lenient on these horses that have lost at the maiden claim level, because they pretty much all did. I mean, with one exception, 2 exceptions. This horse, again, to point out, this is his debut. Again, February time frame, you get all those big barns there. So let's look at that race. I'm just curious to see how that race came back. So I double click again, launch the plot, and then I'm going to go into the grid and just look at it. But I'll peruse the plot here. So horse by the name of Parquetry 1. Okay. So let's look at what's happened. Let's look at the grid. What's happened since to horses that were in that race. What happened since then? Okay, really not much. I mean, you have one winner out of, let me just get this to zero, in 20 starts. You had a couple of seconds. I wouldn't say that race came back particularly strong. So then they dropped him down. He ran okay. Ran him in the 40 race. He ran a big number. You know, there's a possibility, you know, without regression. He's 12-1. That just worries me. I mean, he's the third choice. It's kind of cold on the board right now. Don't know. The 2 just looks too cheap. Okay, so I'm tossing the 2. He's 19-1. The 3 becomes a little bit more interesting. Okay, so this is a horse that hasn't lost below the level. And in his first race, he was slow. This is the horse I was worried because he was slow out of the gate in both races. So, but he was slow out of the gate in his debut, and we projected a drop. They didn't drop him, and the guy who did this race, known as, we thought this race came back strong. So let's look at it. You know, thought the race not come back strong, but thought the race was a strong race. You know, based on, you know, the time, all the things, you know, the way the race was run. That was his visual of the race that was strong. Let's see if he's right about his assessment. I think it was like 18 days ago, so it's going to be hard to. I don't think much horses have come back since then, but let's look. No one's come back, so it's hard to assess. But if that's right, if that was a strong race, you know, this horse 73, you know, project this horse to prove on that 73. Okay, so you got 83, but that was on the dirt. On the 1, 77 on the dirt. So now you have a horse that's actually around a 73, maybe some room for improvement. Gets back a little bit more ground, comes out of swing. Big thing with this horse is going to be the gate. You know, could this horse get a clean break for once? If he does, you know, there's a possibility. The 4 is a firster. Again, in a race like this, I would consider this horse. So if I, you know, the way I would be betting this race is maybe if I was looking into multi-race bets like a pick 3, I may just take a shot against a 7, 8, and 9. Just thinking that there's really no value there, and it really is not making me comfortable. You know, those horses when I just think this race could just blow up. The 5, kind of a little bit of improving form, but you know, it's a horse that's had chances. So I'm not seeing a lot of more upside on this horse. Might have just, you know, might be where he's going to be. 6, dirt. Again, no way to know that this horse is going to make the conversion to turf. You know, I think we would see something in his form, you know, like a turf qualifier or something. And then, you know, we have the 7, 8, 9. So to me, the 4 was the 5th on the 4th of the doubles ahead of the 9. He's 10-1 to 9, 7-2. So I would expect him to go down some more, but he's getting a little bit of action the first time starter. In a race like this, you know, I would consider him because really this field is weak. And then the 3 was the other one. Maybe with a clean break, this horse can do some damage, but it's very difficult to bet these lower price horses in a race with really no confidence. Again, you know, the 7, never on turf. Yeah, he's 3-1. The 8, trouble that starts. He's had his own issues, 2-1. And then the 9, we looked at that race that he ran. He okay, you know, it's coming back 14 days, but that race, you know, no one's really come back out of that race, I guess, is what we assessed. So, you know, I think with Live Oak, you know, maybe you can upgrade a little bit on the 9. It's just too low, you know. Let's see where the odds end up. Let's see if the 9 floats a little bit. And it might be some inclusion on the 9 if that was the case. But I couldn't bet this race vertically. I just don't have enough, you know, the way it's going to set up. So I would be playing within, you know, some type of pick race. And those are the 3. 2 definitely, and a 3 that might end a 9. Again, depending on where he ends up in the late betting. So I think this board will adjust a little bit. Okay, so that's Gulfstream. I'm gonna after this race, I'm gonna wrap things up. And again, thank you for people who are listening. Okay, so we got a little bit of an update here. Emily coming via the satellite here. Rich Strike out of the Preakness. Oh, big news there. Okay, thank you, Emily. Cool, good stuff. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race. It's going to be interesting to feel like she said that Secret Oath is in. I think early voting is going to go. He's an interesting horse. I would assume Epicenter would go there. Seems like a race that would suit him. I don't think Zandon will, but yeah, maybe I'm wrong on that one. But we'll see. It's always interesting, you know. And like there's the other thing too with these qualifier things. I think it's I think makes like qualifying in the races where they all run, and I think does so much to try to follow sports. It's kind of like the NASCAR thing, right? You following your favorite horse or trainer. And the only way you could do that is you see them run regularly against, some of the similar horses. You kind of build a little rivalry. I think that's missing, and I think they do a really good job around the Triple Crown, and I don't know why that's not done for the older horses, especially. I mean, there was a program one time going way back. Barry, I can't remember Barry's last name, but he started this whole series where, the older horses would run these different races, and it was a kind of a, I don't know if it was a point system, but it might have been. Yeah, I think it might have been. They should incentivize it. I think it'd be great for racing. People would start establishing identities with horses. Then I think. Like players, it's hard to like when every race is like, okay, whatever, it's the 9 horse. It's just like I think we need to really, other than the stars, some of these other horses might go on the radar. But if they were like Simplification, for example, I mean, this horse that on a point system would be right there now, I guess, in terms of competing for the leading. Standings for 3-year-olds and stuff like that, and be interesting is and we can kind of tell that. But I wish they would just run that right through the end of the year, that whole point thing, including the summer races and all the rest. Because I think, especially in Eclipse voting, they forget the whole first half of the year sometimes. They just focus on the last half of the year, and I understand that's important. But those big races at the end are kind of the culmination. But still, I think the whole year counts. And if there was a point system, especially with the older horses, that would be pretty cool. And I think with the Dubai race, I think they have to. I know winning you're in, but that second prize in that horse, I think it should be more of a winning you're in. I was shocked that the second place finisher there, the horse that set the crazy fractions in the Kentucky Derby, got into the race. Just because if you look at his form, he was pretty much a allowance sprinter. Summers tomorrow ran the fastest first quarter in Derby history, I think. 21.78. I think that was the first. I don't know, but it kind of was reminiscent of the old days when you get some guy trying, hey, I'm going to drive my horse in the Kentucky Derby, complete sprinter. And at a crazy pace, and the rest is history, so to speak. So, I think maybe I have to look at that. Those global races, I think you win, you're in. For instance, second or third. I guess there was points. 150. It must have been. Maybe if someone knows that, you let me know. But you got the result you did. Okay, they're approaching the gate of Gulfstream Race 3. This is going to be the last one I'm going to do. We were just thought it was a crazy race, and that I guess the 7-8 are the favorite and co-favorite. The one really cool on the board, but he's kind of good in the doubles. But thought that if he could take a chance, hopefully he gets away from the gate cleanly. The 3 and the 4, a first-time starter again in a race like this. And the 9 deserves a look. It's a little shorter than I would like, but I think he's a horse, comes from a prominent kind of owner stable. I think it's the horse that probably another horse that can improve in 6. So I guess for me, it's 3, 4, 9 in this race. But that betting vertically probably be doing the old spreadaroo and the multi-race wagers. I don't know what this. I think this might start the pick 6. I guess, huh? Yeah. Yeah, I guess it does because you only probably run 8 races today, so this would be the first leg of pick 6. All right, let's see where we're at. They're all standing in the gate very quietly. I guess they're waiting for the 9 to load. Okay, 9's walking up. A little hesitant. Yeah, there's. I mean, some people send me some stuff. That's why, in terms of wanting to know or see things on videos or broadcast, and that's why I brought up the notes thing again. You know, where to find the information, how to look at it, how to assess it. So if there's other things that people are looking for, you know, just let me know, or just go to our website and go to the contact form and just send it. You know, we're very responsive in terms of information or questions or something like that. Okay, they're all standing 8, and they're off slow on the 9. 7 broke right out, made an easy lead. 4 and 3 is way back. I mean, that's where he's gonna. I didn't even see if the 3 broke actually. Go back, you know, rewind on my other thing. And he just kind of got off slow as he normally does. Yeah, 3 did his normal slow. It's just a slogger. Slogger. 7, 8, the 1 in the pocket. 9 looks like getting a uncovered wide trip. 3 is making kind of a middle move wide out in the middle of the track. Not doing themselves any favors being out there. Not sure what the tactic is here. Getting caught in no man's land, that horse. 4 looks like he's saving ground on the inside, but he's on the back. 8, another horse. And around the turn. Looks like the 7's controlling the pace here. 8 trying to make a move. Yeah, it looks like I don't know, looks like the 6. No, I don't think 6 can catch. 7. Yep, 7 just kind of ran away from him. Oh, looks like the 6. Looks like the 6 is going to reel him in. He's 30-1. Well, let me go back and see what I missed on the 6 here. Yeah, well, this was the horse that didn't know how to assess his turfiness, but he did close a little bit in his debut, and he was bet a little bit. That was his horse. So, yeah, I you got to races like this when you're just not sure about the favorites, and you're playing a pick 6. I definitely would have had a bigger spread here and would include as many horses as I could, because just didn't trust the horses taking most of the action there. But the 3 and the 4 didn't do much running there at all. Neither did the 3. So anyway, that's the close. So hope you enjoyed our show, and check us out on OptixEQ.com. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.